The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. On a Sabbath day, Jesus had gone for a meal to the house of one of the leading Pharisees, and they watched him closely. He then told the guests a parable, because he had noticed how they picked the places of honor. He said this: "When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take your seat in the place of honor. A more distinguished person than you might have been invited, and the person who had invited you both may come and say, 'Give up your place to this man,' and then, to your embarrassment, you would have to go and take the lowest place. No, when you are a guest, make your way to the lowest place and sit there, so that when your host comes, he may say, 'My friend, move up higher.' In that way, everyone with you at the table will see you honored. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and the man who humbles himself will be exalted." Then he said to his host, "When you give a lunch or a dinner, do not ask for your friends, brothers, relations, or rich neighbors, for fear they repay your courtesy by inviting you in return. No, when you have a party, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind. That they cannot pay you back means that you are fortunate, because repayment will be made to you when the virtuous rise again." The Gospel of the Lord. That Gospel passage comes from Luke's Gospel, chapter 14. In fact, there's a little bit that's missed out. We had the first verse, and there's a little bit in brackets or ... and then we carry on with the rest of the bit that we've heard. So most of it is centered around sort of meals. In fact, the first bit, we begin with Jesus is being invited to eat bread, which suggests a rather more humble meal. And then as it goes on, the meals get bigger and bigger, which apparently is a kind of classical style of writing. So Jesus is invited to this house, and they're going to spy on him. They want to look at him, these Pharisees do. And what happens in the ... bit that we didn't hear was the man with dropsy. And they're watching Jesus to see what he's going to do. And Luke is careful to point out that it's a Sabbath day. And then Jesus gives them the idea. He says, "Well, what would you do if a son or an ox of yours got stuck in a well on a Sabbath day? Would you get it out?" Well, of course you'd get it out. Incidentally, that's a bit of an insight into Jesus' sense of humour, because if we translate it back into Aramaic, we find the words all very similar between the son, which is a bera, and a well, which is very similar, bera, and beira is the ox. So it's a bit like saying your stupid son, who's like an ox, has fallen into the well. Perhaps that has actually happened. And Jesus referring back to it, saying, "Well, you remember that? What did you do when your son, possibly drunk, fell in the well and you picked him out? He's a bit like an ox, wasn't he?" So what he's saying really is, you're really stupid. You can't really understand, can you, that your way of interpreting the law, the Old Testament law, has actually made you being uncharitable. So should I save life or should I not save life on the Sabbath day? So he did, of course. He healed the man with dropsy. And this was something that we see time and time again in the Gospels, that it makes Jesus very angry. He's angry with the Pharisees, who pride themselves, thinking they're wonderful, good, religious people, because they follow their own misinterpretations of the law, but that in fact has led them to be uncharitable, which Jesus sees as the first of all the commandments of love of God and love of one's neighbour. So then we come on to this parable here that Jesus gives about being invited to a wedding feast. Well, when you're invited, Don't pick the first place, like I can see that you're always doing, he's saying. You're always doing this. You're picking the best place in the banquets. Just because you're Pharisees, you think you're so good. So you go to the best place. So he tells them, no, go and sit at the lowest place. And then, if you really want to be honoured, then you might be moved up a place or two in front of everybody else. It looks a bit like Jesus is talking about false humility, that you deliberately go to the bottom in order to be picked up and raised up in front of everybody else. I'm sure that's not what Jesus really intended. He wants us to understand the importance of humility. And perhaps through this parable, and Jesus is teaching on humility, we see something of his own humility. He who's truly God, who is above everything that he's made because he's actually the creator of all this, even though he's joined in this creation of his. He doesn't seek to be on the top. Being God, he should have been born in a palace, not in a stable because there was no room for him, even in an inn. He could have been born in the heart of the Roman Empire, not in a backwater place like Palestine. And throughout his life we see examples of humility. Most especially perhaps we might see how he learnt humility from his mother, Mary. Remember when she visited the cousin Elizabeth, and in her Magnificat, God has looked upon her humility, her lowliness, and henceforth all ages were called her blessed. She wasn't saying that because she was proud. She was just saying, this is what God has done to me. This is simple humility. So this takes us to really an understanding of the origins of the word humility. In English, the word humility comes from the Latin word humus and then humilitas. So humus means earth, and humilitas then is humility. Humility is related to the earth. Now that sounds rather strange. But in fact, first of all, it could mean that you're in the dirt, that you're humiliated, put down low, down to the earth. But the true Christian sense of humility means actually you're grounded in reality. A bit like an electrical appliance, it's earthed. So we're earthed. We got a little green and yellow a piece of wire coming from us and stuck in the ground. We are grounded in reality so that we don't sort of get charged up with the static electricity of pride. So that's the origins of the word in humus. In fact, we see the same in Greek, which is karai, which means the earth. And they've got a similar way of turning that, kamatsemenos or something like that, which means humility. So it's based on the same idea of being grounded in reality. And that's not all. It gets more exciting because it's the same in Hebrew as well. So, you know the first man, what would we call him? Adam in Scripture, Adam. That comes from the same word, same idea, Adama, which is the earth. So to be truly human means to be grounded in the reality that we are. So that's what true humility is. It's grounded in the reality. So if God is made like this, we're good at that, or whatever, wherever, but whatever state we might be in society and so on, God has done that, that's okay, but we live it humbly, which is what we read in the first reading, Ecclesiasticus, which is thought to have been written by King Solomon. So he talks about the importance of being humble. There's no cure for the proud man's malady. It's an illness to be proud. I think, I don't know if any of you like Kipling or his writings. I do. And there's a rather famous poem which rather illustrates what we're talking about. So I'll finish with that. It's called If. I'll just read the first and the last verses. You can go home and read the rest. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, yet don't look to good nor talk to wise. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you but none too much, If you can fill the unforgiving minute with seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and, which is more, you'll be a man, my son.